Like to start the meeting with a pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming. We'll start with public hearing on local law number 2 of 2024, entitled Local Law Amending Village Code Chapter 245 regarding composting. Who would like to speak first? I see a couple of farmers back there. Who's going to come up? Have you read it?
No.
Come on, Mr. Ludlow.
I don't have anything to say yet.
Nothing to say?
What happens?
I'll start,
Okay.
but the problem is that I think, Lee Foster, 690 Main Street, second fund. We have with us, Mr. Carpenter from Long Island Farm Bureau.
Yep.
He has, I think, he has a time allotment. I'd like to provide
okay.
him with the time to go on presently, and then whatever happens, happens. Is that all right, Robbie? Okay.
If you're under time constraint, we can take you first. It's Ron Carpenter from the Long Island Farm Bureau.
He's muted. He's
Can't hear
muted.
you.
No, he's good.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Tillotson. I'll be brief on my comments, and I appreciate the ability to weigh in on the code. So I'll read my testimony. Mayor Tillotson and members of the Sagaponack Village Board, thank you for the opportunity to speak on the proposed composting code. My name is Robert Carpenter, and I'm the director at Long Island Farm Bureau. We're a membership association that represents the agricultural community on Long Island in every commodity possible that we have here. We currently have multiple concerns about the proposed code as it's drafted. First, the draft code does not take into account the science and the process to create effective compost. Compost is more than just adding leaves and/or manure to soil. It's a balanced scientific process that farmers utilize to amend their soil. Farmers never just throw product or leaves or anything on their fields just to throw on there. They have a process that they utilize, and it's very scientific. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Second, New York State has recognized in its broad report and study of the CLCPA, which is the Climate Leadership and Community Preservation Act, and that identifies agricultural lands as being a carbon sink and beneficial in our fight for climate change. Part of that sequestration has to do with soil health. And that is something that's very, very important in carbon sequestration. And the soil health benefits mostly come from adding organic material to the soils, in effect, composting. Third, proper composting allows for less use of tillage and for better retention of nitrogen. This saves farmers money because they don't have to apply extra nitrogen to fields if it's already in the soil as is through the composting process. In addition, by adding the proper organic material to soils, farmers sequester nitrogen much better, especially with our sandy loam soils, and this helps prevent leaching and/or runoff into our aquifer. So it's a really important process that farmers follow for soil health and nitrogen sequestration. There are many other concerns about this proposed code, but in the essence of time, we ask that the board tables this code and takes the time to consult with the many organizations that are out there that utilize and help farmers with their soil health practices. Organizations and groups such as Cornell Cooperative Extension, the Long Island Farm Bureau, the Suffolk County Soil and Water Conservation District, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources Conservation Service, and let's not forget the Department of Environmental Conservation and the Department of Ag and Markets, who are instrumental in helping the farmers utilize these practices. We ask that you table this code and come up with a workable draft that's acceptable to the farmers and allows the farmers to do these practices the way that they're intended. Let's not forget that Southampton Town, the County of Suffolk, the Village of Sagaponack has worked tirelessly over the years in preserving farmland. And they did this for a reason, because they recognize the benefits of our farms to our communities for food production and all of the benefits that come with agricultural operations. It's up to us, now that a majority of land is preserved, to now foster our farmers and allow them to be able to utilize the land in the way that it was intended to be used in agricultural production. As times change, environments change, climate changes, farmers need the tools necessary and need the ability to do it properly to be able to continue to grow their products. So we ask that there be a viable farm operation in all of the county where farmland is preserved. So we ask that you table this, sit down, work with the farm community and the organizations, and draft something that has meaning and purpose to this code. So I thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, don't run away.
Okay, and I do have
just-
one more request. I'm not certain if you're going to keep the hearing open for written comments, but I
Oh,
would.
yeah, we'll keep it open.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm looking for is something very specific. We still have a lot of land that needs to be preserved in Sagaponack.
Sure.
And it's heading on, it looks like it's gonna be 2 years. We finally have a farmer who wants to get his land preserved, and the town's been sitting on the money. And I see a necessity that we're gonna have to get private people to help fund the farmland preservation. If someone starts composting grass clippings, leaves, brush, stumps, all that kind of stuff on the farmland that exists here now, no one's going to donate money for that type of thing next door to them. The typical, composting of manure, potatoes, any kind of farm product, we're not looking to stop that. I mean, that's been a normal practice. But stuff that's being trucked in, where you're producing, constant truck traffic that we see at other sites, the odors, the machine noise of grinding equipment. The prime example, I guess, would be the pit on Millstone Road, which took them years to get that stopped. There were accounts of groundwater pollution from things that came out of the composted material, which wouldn't come out of farm products. If Falkowski, Ludlow wants to compost their cow manure, we don't see any problem with that. Or if you have rotten potatoes, cabbage, anything that smells, if it's a farm product, no problem. But the trucked in stuff is really what we're aiming at. And if there's some way you can help us focus in on that more effectively, that's fine. I understand completely how, our soil here has a very low carbon content, and that how composted materials can help bring that up and have better nitrogen retention, water retention. But I think if we have people grinding stumps out there in the middle of between Daniels and Hedges Lane, we're never going to raise another dime to preserve the land that still needs to be preserved. So if you're willing to work with us on that, that's great.
I would be happy to come out and work with you on all of this and get the proper people in there to help you figure out a path forward to recognize that there's composting, I think, for agricultural operations, which to me is a little bit different than the things that you're talking about, which may or may not fall into agriculture in total. But I think that some way, somehow, there's got to be a balance between the two. But again, I'd be happy to work with you, and you have my contact information, and I'd be happy to have a conversation and sit down and come out and visit with you all.
Great, okay, thank you. I'm glad you showed up.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to comment
Yeah.
and to hear our concerns.
Yeah, no, I mean, the point is, I'm pro-farm. That's the only reason I ran for mayor again, because I figured I'd have a bully pulpit to try to get people with farmland to come forward and deal with the town to try to get the rights, development rights bought off the property. But I realize that some things may be an impediment to having that happen, so.
Sure.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you for the time.
Yep. Who's next?
I'll go. There's
Okay,
nothing more, it'll spark some conversation.
My name is Lee Foster. I live on 698 Main Street, Sagaponic. I'm a resident whose family has strong, enduring ties to farmland. Generations who farm, farmers. My comments are my own, separated from my current capacities in other organizations and agencies that deal with agriculture. My struggle all along with this code amendment has been the question, what does the village want? This hearing gives me the opportunity to address my concerns. Anytime the terms farmland, field, farm operation, agricultural fields enters into the conversation, I perk up. Why? Because it's the very resource that has governed my life for 61 years when I married a farmer. And thus my interest in farmland out on the East End particularly, where mutual goals and planning has prevented full density build out ever since the 1970s. Regardless of what has been preserved, planning has intensified the conflict between those who own it and those who look at it. I've become hyper vigilant. I don't want this to be just a, broadside to you guys, because I know that you are struggling right now. So please just know that my passion right now might enter into my words. According to statements made, anonymous complaints drive this village board at times. Anonymity and anonymity is a device. Should we allow emotions to influence legislation? I don't think so. It makes it uncomfortable, but it's obvious that they do. This code amendment is about perception and eyes. A lookout, a look-see, and a lookout. The eye is to be scrutinized. When people have eyes on you for what you own and not for who you are, it's indecent and predatory. And there must be a clear legislative intent. And actually, this conversation is focused on the disposal of material that can be reused. In fact, in the dynamic of interconnectedness, this region is ill-equipped to recycle. As the farms have diminished, the fundamental tonnage of residential pruning, landscaping, the necessary maintenance has increased. I find this very interesting, I'm just saying. On February 14th, 2024, at the very same meeting where a cell tower was discussed and immediately approved, according to the minutes, Mayor Tillotson noted, and this is a quote in the minutes, that in other communities, some of this preserved land is being used for things which he doesn't believe that Sagaponic wants or can support, such as composting, sod and tree farms that create greater truck traffic, odors and machinery noises, and depletes natural resources. These types of operations are all acceptable operations under ag easement, under the New York State Ag and Markets Law, but could better be supported on larger tracts of land. And then opined that selling additional development rights to Southampton Town, known as an enhanced easements, would maintain a kind of traditional row cropping that is understood as customary. Respectfully, this appeal is an enormous overreach, and that this is what Ag and Market seeks to prevent. There's certain quality situations, and no, not quality, farmers and farmlands, which we're talking about. The minutes then reflect that Mayor's comments then were directed to the board to encourage proactive approach to their neighbors. Some farmers, some not, I'm sure. Okay, farm field, what is it? It's an open window, it's an open door. Farmers work in plain sight. Land, it's a view shed, a working landscape, a farmer's wallet, an encapsulated environmental process that is challenged both by seasons and economy. If you farm in Sagaponic, you also know your field is surrounded by people who do not farm. They are at liberty to put up green giants, plant privet on the property line, and often drain their pools. Well, their landscapers drain their pools onto freshly prepared soil and drown the seeds that have already been sown. In August, on the agenda for 8/21 August, under discussion items was composting on agricultural fields. With little said, from the rest of the Board of Trustees, Mayor Tillotson said farmers can do whatever they want. And then his additional information centered on calling attention to the cost of disposing a 30-yard dumpster from his son's establishment, followed by a mention of another horticultural business, I believe Hampton Yards in Bridgehampton, which is behind a deer fence, has large pieces of earth moving equipment and great quantities of landscaping material, dug as well as growing. Additionally, the Ham Farm in Wainscott, which is a tree farm. And finally, an enormous legal composting facility near exit 69 on the LIE, adding, quote, and we the village don't want that, unquote. Where's the data? Code relates to analysis, not complaints. So I swiveled around these objectives, wondering what the heck is going on. The village, from my point of view, is trying to prohibit as well as protect. Evidence of this as reason for my concerns was when Mayor Tillotson asked Councilor Egan to code a draft amendment saying, pick out one particular item and prohibit. Yard waste disposal prohibited, not on farm fields. To my knowledge, the elemental stakeholders were never approached. So Gibson Beach blew up, and while Mayor Tillotson was addressing that issue on WLNG, the question was asked of him, what more is going on in Sagaponic? Answering, non-farm material on farmland. And again, who understands what's being conveyed beside the suspicion of something queer going on? So in August, when the mayor asked Mr. Egan to draft code for Sagaponic, the laws, by the way, are the foundation of the code. The code amendment 245 agriculture and animal husbandry, which is an interesting hook into chickens, is a mashup of terminologies and unsecured definitions. Summarized in the public notice, as a local law is to clarify and regulate composting on agricultural lands for soil conservation. Well, the details in the code as we are now looking at it, property. Same property, question mark. I'm being picky for a reason. So something which deeply affects me personally is a regulation loosely referencing New York State Agriculture and Markets Law. And what the heck is New York State Administrative 360? Don't know, expect maybe you'll tell us. The covert and the inadvertent is always part of a discussion or debate. And is this a debate? Somehow I don't think so. Maybe you're just giving me time to leave, just to let off some steam, but truly, what does the village want? Okay, so when Bill asked Mr. Egan to pick out one particular item and prohibit, this again amplified simple. I'm always concerned with the word simple adds context. Simplicity is for a God. For us on lower levels, everything is caught in the complex. So on September 18th, the meeting that calmed the crowd concerned about access to Gibson Beach, Combined once again with contention and dispute related to the status of the cell tower, the concerns about composting was reiterated, but nothing was reviewed or discussed in detail, and the hearing was set for today. I'm getting to the end, folks. So this is what I see instead. It's a restriction that has been formulated by an attorney without input from those it will affect. This amendment directs an allowed waste stream away from a permitted use for a farm operation, which up until now has benefited from that option. Where in this amendment is there reference to the right to farm legislation approved in 1981? The last time the right to farm laws was referenced in SAG was in 1921, when Billy Babinski wanted to build a barn. At that same time, Jim Pike was putting up a deer fence. And the Topping family was going through village regs, adjusting lot lines to do what they were finally able to do this year, save some farmland. To my point about sustainability, diversification has been long associated with making a living off the land. Farming is still defined as agricultural production, is maintained by the industrious, by those involved in the qualities of enterprise, seed to table, sod to lawn, perennial plants to landscape. You've got a bunch of dairy farmers in the back, I think. The Sagaponic logo. The reality of a farm field is not a poetic perception of long rows of sunflowers, even though that comes with it. It's called the appeal of a farm stand, the planting of cover crop, and nitrogen fixing and habitat and pollinator fields, and oh yes, carbon sequestration. I hope you folks have really listened to me. It's taken me a long time to put this together. All right, let me see what I can skip. For farmers who still own the land, we live by our objectives, which is to take care of it like our own progeny, the fruit of our labors. Others can't possibly know the enormity of the task. Kenny Schwenk's father, Henry, spoke at a meeting in the 70s when John V. N. Klein was proposing the policy that would spur the preservation of farmland, devised as a legislation related to subdivision, the elements of the agreement 6535, whereby ag reserves could be fractioned. Right down the road at Bridgehampton Community House, Henry stood up, and he was a very big, tall man, and he said, "I think you were just getting ready to cut up the pie." His skepticism was palpable. Henry also said to my husband on numerous occasions, "Take care of the land and the land will take care of you." And right now we're engaged in the questions of how and why. This draft amendment does nothing to protect farmland, and it's an advance notification of how farmland will be viewed. Richard Amper, some years ago, mounted a campaign to reduce options for farmland, suing and losing to Suffolk County over revisions to Article 8, Suffolk County Farmland Protection Legislation. The outcome was a confirmation of agriculture in this county, but it was also a precursor to the unrelenting pressure to designate farmland as simply open space. This amendment, local law number 2, 2024, should be tabled. If such a thing would interest you, you could look to the farmer constituents and ask what you want, what would be encouragement, and then construct a code amendment that would represent those who just want to continue what they've been doing, which apparently still has value to those who want property and an address in Sagaponic. And you've already told me that there will be time for comments, open period time for comments, right? Okay, so
Yeah,
Rhoda, you can have the whole thing.
Absolutely.
I think I might have skipped a couple of paragraphs, but I knew it was 15 minutes long, and I'm awful
No,
sorry.
that's fine. No, that was very helpful. I just, working with Tony Tohill years ago, he was this guy who always looked down the road to see what was coming next. And whenever I drive by that composting operation, maybe it's a Bruno or something property farm up there, and you can smell it, and I think if they did that, 300-foot long windrow of compost, and they turn it from time to time out here in one of these fields, that nobody's gonna put up money to do what we need to do to preserve the remaining land. And so it's not trying to take away somebody's rights. I think it really, my intention is that we don't kill the source of the future preservation of land. I mean, the town doesn't seem to want to come up with the money to buy rights, or they're going to lowball it, or whatever's going on with them. The whole process just seems to drag on, and fortunately, the subject who's interested hasn't walked away from it yet. But there's other things that need to be preserved, and where does that money come from? I mean, that's all I'm trying to do is find, protect what people might expect. Is bringing in brush and stuff and grinding it up, is that essential to farm operations? It hasn't been for 300 years, but it definitely would be a moneymaker in the current environment. So, come on up. I'm just happy just to walk away from everything. I don't want to just sit here and let things happen. As much as possible, I'd like to anticipate them, and I see things going on, and I try to bring it up, and that's what this public hearing is about, is to find out some way that the remaining land that's out there that needs to be preserved gets preserved, and the town isn't working very hard at it. And I've got two guys who ran with me who hope to raise money, but people aren't going to they're not going to give money to something that's going to turn into a stink pot. So what do you do? Please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Emily Lindback. I am the Agricultural Stewardship Specialist with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County. And I would just like to make a statement on the scientific process of compost, and then also the benefits of compost amendments to soil. So first I'll start with the scientific process, just background for all of this. Compost in a compost pile is really like a living being. It requires food, which is a feedstock, and that is in the form of carbon and nitrogen. It also needs moisture and it needs oxygen. And this is a natural process that has existed always, and we just manipulate it at a large scale when we farm compost, right? So like I said, it needs that feedstock, it needs an airflow of oxygen, and it needs moisture. And for that feedstock, you need the correct ratio of carbon to nitrogen, around 20 to 30 to 1, to be able to have that composting process occur correctly. Too much nitrogen, and it's going to be lost as ammonia to the air, it's going to volatilize, or it will leach out of the compost pile. Too little nitrogen, like maybe you can't secure chicken manure, for instance, and the compost pile will not have that aerobic decomposition occurring, and your compost will not be composting. So what actually is occurring when something is composting? It's an aerobic decomposition. Aerobic meaning the presence of oxygen. So like I said, it's necessary to turn, it's necessary to have oxygen flowing in. And then the decomposition that's occurring is because of the presence of microbes. You don't need to add microbes. Microbes exist naturally in those feedstocks I was talking about, and they will break down the compost pile over time. And it's going to go through 3 stages. It's going to start with a mesophilic stage where everything's coming together. It's a low temperature. Then there's a thermophilic phase where everything is composting and heating up. It's going to heat up to about 110 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And then after that process has occurred, it's going to be cured. And after that, it's available to be applied to a field as a soil amendment. Some key things with composting: you have to control your moisture and your oxygen. And if there is oxygen present and that correct ratio of carbon to nitrogen, there should not be much of an odor after that initial phase. When everything's just sitting before it's heated, of course, you're going to smell manure, that's natural. Once it starts heating and composting correctly, there should not be a smell. And then the final end product should not have a smell either. It'll smell like dirt, like rich earth, but it won't smell bad. compost applications and benefits to the soil. Closing the nitrogen cycle is something, of course, we all need to be concerned with. So compost is great for this. It allows us to use leftover waste in the form of carbon and nitrogen and all of these things. And then we can compost it, apply it to fields. That means less fertilizer, which is great for farmers, of course, because they have to purchase less fertilizer. And it's also great, of course, for things like organic farming, because then you have this great layer of nitrogen that's going to slowly be soluble into your soil. It also feeds the soil. And when I say that, I mean it keeps the microbes alive. And those microbes produce byproducts that glue our soil together and keep aggregate stability. So why that's important is because that's going to reduce erosion, which is something that's going to affect every citizen, of course. Also, of course, the biggest thing about compost is that it increases organic matter. Probably people are going to talk about organic matter. What actually is organic matter? It is dead and living plant and animal material in the soil. And it acts as like a rich, spongy material in the soil. And it's going to allow the soil to hold more nutrients, release nutrients more slowly, and do slow leaching through the soil too, which of course is so important because we live on very sandy soil. So increasing that organic matter helps us slow leaching. And it also is going to reduce compaction and help with soil water holding capacity, which is going to mean when we have these events with extreme precipitation, we're going to have less runoff, ponding, flooding onto the farm field itself and neighboring fields and neighboring neighbors. So that's all I have to say about the scientific process, but I'm also happy to answer any questions about it.
Well, I think we should ask the farmers what they want.
Can I ask, I have one more comment.
Sure.
Maybe this isn't specifically about composting, but when the composting came up, I started thinking about things that farmers actually, we need to compost, but there's other things we need that I do think the village has some oversight on. And two things were mentioned earlier, and I just like to mention that again because it's something I deal with so continuously. It was once or twice a year, maybe 3 times, I have a swimming pool emptied onto our farm field. The village is usually very responsive. Mr. Woodsma comes, he looks at what's going on, and if he can, he addresses the homeowner. But I actually have no.
Really, excuse me. I have an officer that can't get out of the parking lot. So whoever's not parked in a spot, can you move your car so I can get, the police officer can get out of the parking lot? I don't know
2 or
who's
3
parked where, but
along that
apparently
side.
there's a couple of cars that are blocking him from getting out. So, yes, you can. Sorry, terribly.
So one of the things I request, I'm gonna come back to the wanting to protect farmland on the in a monetary way, meaning purchase of development rights. But one of the things that I think would greatly help farmers here is as our borders have been largely built upon, the swimming pool thing is real. And I'd love there to be a piece of legislation or a code amendment that would really address that. Because what happens is John comes, if he can find who's pumping the pool, he can get them to shut it off. But we've literally had situations where we're just standing there watching an entire swimming pool be dumped this year into our freshly planted potatoes, so that we adjusted the entire planting because we were actively there in the field. We brought it forward an acre, meaning we couldn't plant essentially as intended about an acre because it was at that point flooded by a swimming pool. That would be really helpful. The other thing that happens a lot is as the deer problem has become a permanent problem, most farmers have put up deer fences. And what happens is because most of the adjacent neighbors have planted on the property line, as time goes by, their privet hedge, whatever it is that's on the property line, begins to go through the deer fence, which compromises the integrity of the deer fence. It makes areas where deer can actually get through. And we've worked it with certain neighbors that we let them know. They've been oh my gosh, okay, we'll come and we'll trim, which means that they need access to our property every year. And I just think when people are building next to farm fields, like, again, this is a subtle thing that I think could be addressed by our code that would actually make it possible, like, for, I mean, the water flowing onto our field, I can't stop, but it seems like the trees, like just planting them somewhere a little bit further. So when we last put up our deer fence, we actually moved it about 18 inches off the property line, because in some cases, the privet was already just there so much that we could do nothing about it. And it's a sort of weird no man's land, that I think that would be another really helpful thing for the farms that continue here, if they just had some relief from that, because otherwise it's an additional expense to maintain that fence when it's being jeopardized by things going through it. And the last thing I wanted to say is that I think what I'm hearing from the village is that in order to protect our farmland here, we're going to need to bring more people to the table to fund that, because there doesn't appear to be a funding stream from the CPF. Even when there is a funding stream from the CPF, sometimes more money needs to be given by the neighbors. And I think that's a separate problem. Like, I hear what you're saying about composting, but I think that's a separate problem that actually points back to the viability of agriculture, period. And we all want to see row crops from one end, you know, because that's what our pretty idea of a farm is. But as a farm, my family in particular, as we've seen traditional row crops, actually, it's not a market we can really participate in anymore. And so it's not easy for farmers to say, you know, I'm going to go pivot this year. Because actually they want to grow vegetables, because that's what we know how to grow. And so when I heard of the compost rule, I immediately began to think what we don't need is more limitations. All of those agencies that Rob Carpenter mentioned, on a first name basis with somebody from all of those departments, like, that's crazy. Like, and I love them all, but actually all of them take up time and paperwork. Just so I can plant a few acres of vegetables, that seems really over the top. So I get afraid when I see the village lining up to be one of those paperwork agencies. And again, most of these agencies that Rob mentioned, it's a reciprocal relationship, but not always. It can be contentious and it can be difficult. And so I would just look to the village for supportive legislation as opposed to restrictive legislation. So thank you.
So this should die,
This should die?
this whole thing.
Well, you bring up an interesting issue, because I'm, again, not speaking in this capacity, but I'm the chair of the Southampton Town
Yeah.
Agriculture Advisory Committee. And there are many concerns of permanently protected agriculture, the use of that property really being extended into what appears to be commercial landscaping. Commercial landscaping is still a horticultural, you know, those are horticultural, they're growing trees.
Yeah.
But it is a problem, but I see that as a separate problem than getting neighbors to help raise money to buy farmland. Like, that is an enforcement issue. Most of the things that we discuss in Southampton Town that seem like the flagrant disregard of agriculturally protected properties, unfortunately, are when they are no longer owned by farmers, and the barn becomes a place to hold private parties or to store vintage cars. Those are sort of what we see as some of the biggest threats, because those are viable agricultural parcels that are being used as personal parks, more or less. And that is throughout the town of Southampton. But I do, you know, in Sagaponic, for example, another thing, you know, there's a few golf courses here on ag reserves. Again, somebody owns the ag reserve, you can't force them to farm it, but it's a golf course, you know? And so when we find out as farmers that we're being squeezed somewhere, and we're like, well, what about the guy with the golf course? So that's enforcement is.
I don't care. I'm willing to drop this right now. I mean, let happen what happens.
Yeah.
But when you see the intensity of an operation on Lumber Lane.
Understood. And there's a lot,
And
again,
if that
that hasn't
happens
come
here,
before
will
us.
anybody give money? I don't think they will.
Well, there's,
So,
again, enforcement and what is actually being preserved. So
Yeah.
I think that there are methodologies by which you could try to, when you've got a given piece. I mean, we can have a lengthy conversation on this that probably other people aren't interested in, so to speak. But I think most people are interested in land preservation, and I think every easement has an opportunity to be written differently to address some of your concerns.
Right.
Farmers have been sold, as you know, enhanced rights, which limits their right to deer fence, horse farms, vineyards.
Right,
You know, it's kind of a laundry list of things that can be picked out. And then the farmer knows full well, I actually sold that right. I
Yeah.
sold that right to have the right to compost on my property. You know, that I think that that's a more sort of open and inclusive way of approaching this as a problem. But, you know, I think what we heard today, you know, really helpful to hear for you guys, probably the breakdown of how composting works on farms. Again, most of the farms here, the ones that still survive, the reason they survive is because they've been diverse and really using beneficial practices for our communities and for the people who eat our food.
yeah, I looked at it as this composting of non-farm stuff was not a traditional thing here.
Right.
And, you know, every time something happens, the neighbors go, well, I didn't realize that could happen.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, there's, right, they could read the right to farm law, no, a bit more, but like, there's an example, if you go to one of the cooperative extensions, they have the ag forum in the winter, and they often have really interesting classes and seminars. And one I went to several years ago was how a farmer, an organic farm, decided to start bringing in, because the municipality had no place to take all of their leaves, lots of leaves there. And he was able to really, he didn't need to bring any nitrogen on his farm. He was bringing in a non-farm product. Of course, he had a lot of oversight, and there was, you know, all those things. I think, again, this is a pretty vocal farm community with a lot of different operations, and there are people here that would be happy to talk to the board maybe about things we could do to keep the agriculture strong here.
if you feel strongly about it,
Yeah, I mean, I've been here, I came through that
Yeah.
in December,
I'd like to hear more about it,
yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
You know,
I-
Sagaponic being tiny, Southampton has open meetings, the agricultural advisory meetings.
yeah, I think the enforcement issues, I mean, you came up with a bunch of different, obviously, got this proposal, and other issues that maybe we should address too, but the enforcement issue and some of the extent that some of these property owners are taking it beyond the agricultural means, in my view, beyond it. You know, it's disconcerting, and you know, we don't need to have trucks coming in and out of a pit like it's going on in Waynescott right now. That's the only thing and that is a mulch pit they've opened up, and they're importing mulch coming in and doing it. But to me, that's just a source of revenue for them. To me, that's not a farming activity. So I'm all for preserving whatever farming, mulching activity there is. So if this doesn't work in any form or fashion, we can't get the professionals to do it. I don't have a problem, you know, just passing on it. But again, it seems like enforcement's gonna be coming down the road here to something where somebody is taking it to a level that's not the intention of pure farming anymore. It's a revenue producing entity. Again, I'm all for farming and farmers and producing and mulching, whatever needs to be done. I get the chemistry to it. I get the goodness to that. But I just don't know. I do see an issue coming down the road on us where we're going to need outside investors, which is going to happen to protect the farmlands here. And if we're going to have any type of, if we have to do it through easements or through some sort of legalities or enforcement, I'm not sure the enforcements are working right now from what I'm hearing from what's going on in the other towns. So it's a concern. I don't have an answer. I want to know more. Okay? I don't have an answer to this.
There's agriculture have a lot of concerns.
Yeah. So but if any of this is hindrance to the farmers here in Sagaponic, then we shouldn't consider it.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, that's, full stop. The question is how do we protect the future of what's happening here when people are taking
Support, that is an amazing question, and it's a big question. How do you protect agriculture here?
right, and
Protecting farmland or open space is different than protecting.
that's our crown jewel here is the farmland. We need to protect it. We can't have mulch pits where trucks are coming from the outside and dumping product in there.
Mhm.
And that's what's kind of going on to some extent. And I think that's all the bill was trying to do, was to preserve. So I don't have an answer with the thing. Have the professional in Farm Bureau, have Cornell get involved to help develop something. if there's a way we can protect ourselves, and you understand what we're trying to protect ourselves from, and, you know, jump in and help us, because we're gonna need it, because, you know, we've got a lot of people eyeing property here that wanna develop it and have alternative uses in farmland. And that's, you know, that's what we're trying to protect, at least that's what I'm trying. So,
Anyone else want to speak? Got a point to make? No dairy farmers? Anything else from the board? Any comments? Okay, well, we'll leave this open eternally.
well, maybe, can I add something? Maybe maybe there is something we can draft that solves our problem.
Yeah, yeah. No, we'll work with Mr. Carpenter.
And I think that, yeah, Rob is
Yeah.
an amazing and knowledgeable resource,
Yeah.
and he works with all of us.
Sure.
Foremost. And I think that there's also farmers right in the community that are more than happy to be part of things that affect them.
Have your name?
Okay, so what do we do? We
So,
hold,
yeah, so I might think there were some excellent suggestions from the Fosters and, you know, with the experts that are here. Perhaps maybe we get a little working group together and we get to submit names to the mayor and trustees that want to be on it. Have a little working group. Yeah, limited true for the public officers law and the public meetings law. But let me suggest this. We're not gonna, the board's not gonna take any action on this. Let's close the public hearing today. Keep it open for written comments for a period of 15 days. And then after that, if we can get a working group, certainly Lee, Mary Lee, and anybody, the dairy farmers, everybody else who wants to get involved, Farm Bureau, Cornell certainly. And see, again, it's not to prohibit composting on the property, it's just to prohibit the importation of other materials in excess as a compost facility is really what the concern was. And obviously, we know the science of composting, it's important, it's necessary, but the importation and becoming a mulch pit was the concern. But if there's a way to more fine tune that, to make it more beneficial to the farmers, it's certainly something that we want to do.
And it's 15 days, why 15 days? Just
Or
to
any
keep it up.
amount of time just for people to get their homework in.
I'm happy to be a part.
Respectfully, Mr. Egan, I would like you to table this. It is a very, very onerous and extremely difficult to understand amendment which is print. Please table it. We'll come back with a more clear, well constructed. And I think we can do that. I think we can do that. But this particular amendment should be tabled.
Yeah.
Well, the public hearing's being closed, Lee. Nothing is gonna happen.
Yeah.
Until it comes back before.
It's essentially the same thing. Yeah.
Essentially table.
Is it the essential?
It's like that.
Yes,
It
okay.
is, yes.
Can we
Thank you very
simply close the hearing and vote this down?
Yes, we can turn it
Yeah,
down
why don't
now,
we
sure.
we'll just erase this. And if somebody can come up with something better, then we'll,
Well, we
Have a
will come up
public
with
hearing
something
again.
better.
and if we can't, we'll never see it again.
Thank you.
But I was just trying to get ahead of something that I see over there and I see it over here. And I think it would be very difficult to deal with it if it comes into this little rectangle of village. That was my concern.
I'll go for it.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing on it.
I'll second. I'll second.
I'm voting against it. All
Well,
in
what you
favor?
would do is just do a motion to deny or
Yeah, I'll make a motion to burn this.
Yeah, vote no against this resolution.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're done with this, okay? And if something better can be created, great, we'll do it. And if not, let them compost. But don't tell me I didn't try. Let's see, site plan application of 493 Sagaponic LLC. I make a motion to adjourn that until the AHRB makes a decision.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, yeah. Meadow meter, we need to extend, there's been a request to extend the, filing of the final plat for another 90 days. I'll make a motion to extend that.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. That's a piece of land that we're hoping will get preserved. Minutes, I haven't had a chance to read them yet. They just got printed, so I think we'll have to pass over them unless somebody's ahead of me on it.
Well, we have one set of minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll get.
yeah, I haven't.
You're right, okay,
The one that just came in, I
I'm
haven't
fine
had a
with the
chance
ones
to
that
read
came
it,
in,
so
okay.
we'll delay that. I think we just got the correspondence from the police department. Are you ready to do that?
I'm summarizing their
Oh,
summary.
okay. If you're up for it.
Yeah, for August and September, there were 9, in August 4 and September 3 abandoned calls. Accidents with no personal injury for August 1 September. Alarm codes 11 August, 8 September. Arrests, VNT, 3 in August, 11 in September. There was 1 death investigation in August. And then 3 civil complaints in August, none in September. 1 hazmat incident in August, none in September. Odor investigation, 1 in September, none in August. Parking complaint, 2 in August, none in September. Reckless driver, 3 in August, 5 in September. Suspicious incidents, 5 in August, 2 in September. Suspicious person, 2 in August, none in September. Traffic stops, 92 in August, 80 in September, with a total of, since January, 934. And that's it. So if you need to know where they all were, I suggest you go and take a look at
Okay.
40 pages of it.
Gibson Beach, can we remove the gate down there now? There's plenty of sand,
Yeah,
erosion's.
I'm all for that.
Yeah. No reason to have it there anymore.
Plus we need to move some of the sand forward,
Right.
south.
Yep.
And clean up those grasses.
Yeah.
Apparently they, Parks and Rec were down there and did some of it, I'd asked
Oh,
them. I sent.
I didn't go there
in
unless it is.
We can send it out later, I was told, I didn't go down there either, but I was told some of it was trimmed. But I have asked them to trim it,
Okay,
and take the sand, but I.
no, not take the sand.
No, but to open up the entrance.
Yes.
Where it's all,
Yeah,
you know, taking its
regroup,
place.
grown.
I think that I was asking was when that gate, the gate precluded vehicular access, but does that mean that vehicular access is now okay again? Like, once the gate comes down, people can roll
It
on?
was originally put up because there was erosion and kind of a.
Leave the drop.
Very,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
dangerous.
weird.
Yeah, so there's plenty of sand down there, there's no problem, so.
As
You have
long
to
as
get over
it's
the lock, you
days-
have to get over the
Yeah,
lock.
right, oh my God.
So the
I just
issue,
wonder how quickly that will be eroded again, and I guess the gate will just go up again when that happens again. That's probably everything.
Yeah, I wasn't here on this board, and I think 4 of us weren't on this board when the gate was put up. Were you on the board when that went up?
I think we should leave it, it's open,
Oh.
by taking it out, you're gonna have to go put
we
it back
leave the post,
somewhere.
but we'll just take the
Once
gate.
once vehicles start going up and down that, we're gonna have the same problem we had 5 years.
so the issue is that we had a death, that we had a death where we couldn't access the beach.
I thought you had a vehicle to access.
We had the vehicle that could access it, but couldn't get through
Couldn't
the
get through the
gate.
gate.
Oh,
And because the gate was there, so it's not a regular sized vehicle, it's actually a small, it's a Polaris. We couldn't do that, so we had to we went to the gate and we had to go all the way around to Sagamane to then go on the beach to go get the.
It needs to come up.
So it was a safety issue as far as.
So the question is the gate should come out, in my opinion, it's all busted up anyhow right now.
That is.
And so, but there is a post that's kind of in the center that if the post stays, will probably, there's two posts.
Three posts.
Will probably
Yeah, right.
prevent cars from
And
going on, but
Each of those posts are cemented into a concrete curbing, which is what we put up to stabilize the edge of the road, so the
Chainsaw.
sand could come back.
My suggestion would be to look at that. Make sure, again, the Polaris is not as wide as a regular
Yeah,
car.
Polaris can get through it.
If the Polaris can get through it, then that's fine. But to me, it's incumbent on everyone here that we have the ability to access that beach.
Well, we're gonna have to
and
put a sign up then saying, not wide enough for a normal vehicle.
So there's
Otherwise,
plenty,
they're gonna be,
Oh, it is wide enough?
the gates are what, 14 feet?
Oh,
7-foot gates, something like that?
okay.
no,
Sorry.
we can leave the post and the gate hinges, but just take the gates off the posts.
Thank you.
And we can store them out here. If we need them, they can always go back.
Yes.
The post would prohibit some cars from going through. It's
No.
not quite wide.
No, it's wide.
Forget
I
that.
was down there yesterday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was there. I wouldn't take my car.
Well, you'll see.
You have a Hummer? I was gonna say a Hummer probably.
Straight, if you try to go sideways.
You could get through, okay. I mean, you do it at your own risk, I guess.
So the consensus is remove the gates and store them here?
Yep.
Okey-dokey.
And keep the posts.
No, you're okay with that? You're okay with that?
Yeah, I wasn't aware that the fire department could access.
Yeah.
That lockbox wasn't available?
So the issue with the lockbox is two. Number one was corroded. So.
Not the
lockbox.
lockbox.
Or the actual lock was corroded. The second thing is the access of the lockbox is by the chiefs. And the EMS are the first people that get there. They don't have access to it.
For anyone who doesn't know, Mark is an ambulance person in the Bridgehampton Fire Department. If you haven't called for an ambulance yet, you might not have met him.
No, I hope you don't. I hope I don't need you that way.
Okay, our auditor's report came through. And the only comment they had was that, I don't know if you noticed, they wanted to bid out things that were not required to bid out, such as hiring our consultants. So anyway, things are fine. That's the SADI Partners report. Yeah. We have a request from Liz and Joan Hamburg. I think you've heard from Joan Hamburg, I think before I was back on the board, maybe. I can't remember, a few years ago. When her husband died, she wanted to put a memorial bench on the beach. Because he used to take a chair, and well, if you read the letter. And I think it's nice. I mean, we have a handicap space and might as well have a place where a handicapped person could sit on the beach if she wants to provide it. I mean, of course, we got to find out what they want to do and tell them where, you know, off to the side. so
It'll have to be dug out on occasions,
Or
probably.
probably, yeah. Any problem with telling her that
No.
she can give us a photo of what they want to do?
Yeah, no,
and-
that's-
Yeah, okay. Okay, resolution to,
Release.
yeah. There was a bond for, on a property that was required to do some ornamental plantings, screening. And, they had a performance bond of $15,000. And if I can find it in here,
Should be in there.
yeah, I know it is. Oh, okay. Well, I don't have to read this whole thing, do I? I'll just make a resolution.
You just resolve that.
Alvina Gray,
Yeah, there you go.
to, return the bond money to, who is it?
Decker. priceless custom home.
okay.
Broke a check.
Peter Mangiamelli.
Okay. Make a resolution to refund that money. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the hedges on the corner of Parsonage and Town Line Road sent some excellent photos of trucks blocking their driveway, blocking access to their farm field. And they've requested that we restrict parking for the stretch along that. Well, that, we restricted it a year or two ago, south of them, but we didn't realize that they would need the same protection north of Parsonage Lane.
No, north. North.
Yeah, north of Parsonage.
Yes.
We did.
Oh,
we
I'm
did it
so
south
sorry.
of-
You're right.
Yeah, we did
I
it
thought we
south.
had no parking signs there a
No,
few years back.
oh,
Not in that area there, we did it from the south of Parsonage, but we didn't do it north. We didn't have it from Montauk Highway, 180 feet south. There's no parking up by Town Line Barbecue, so there's no parking there. Well,
Yeah.
right,
So also no parking on the farm, by the farm. So in other words, it's farther down from Town Line Barbecue going
Right.
south.
right,
Closer to Parsonage.
Right.
right.
So like Parsonage to the end of the cornfield?
I think there's a house that, two houses, I think, one of them's for sale. New construction,
One with the rocks in front?
yeah, the rocks.
I don't think you can park there.
Well,
anyway.
okay, yeah.
No, because it's got a culvert.
Right,
Right. It's a ditch.
Yep. It's a drainage ditch.
so we'll come up with a resolution for the next meeting to, okay, good,
We'll figure out the distance.
yeah.
Okay. Discussion items.
Any questions on the financials? Can we pay bills or?
What are the discussion items before that?
It's in local law. No, there's nothing outstanding at the moment.
Okay.
So I'm gonna pay bills now.
Yep.
I'll make the motion to expend $62,023.20 from the general fund. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to expend from the tree fund, $7,290.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to expend from the trust and agency planning fund, $2,165.50. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to expend from the capital highway fund, $215. All in favor? Aye. Make a motion to expend from the trust and agency fund, $15,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And make a motion to expend from Village Hall Project Fund, $4,200.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have people from the public who would like to address the board about any topic whatsoever? Go
Hello, Alex Kriegsman, 279 Main Street, Sag Harbor. I represent a group of residents who are opposed to the cell tower. I know I have a 2-minute limit, so I'll be brief. I came to the last meeting and I'm back here again. you as a mayor and as a board have duties to all of the residents in this village. You have duties of transparency and you have fiduciary duties. And you have failed in those duties. This was done in a way that was improper. The notice was improper. It appears to be designed in a way so as little people as possible knew about it, had the opportunity to comment on it, and had the opportunity to have a meaningful discussion about it. And to make matters worse, at the last meeting, rather than stand up and stand behind what you've done, you hid behind your lawyer and had him come up here and rant at residents in a way that was just totally improper for a municipal attorney. And I would tell you what I tell my kids, it's not too late to do the right thing. It's not too late for you to meet with residents of this village who have concerns and hear what they have to say, consider alternatives, and to do this the right way. And I would urge you to do that. Thank you.
We have someone else who'd like to address the board?
Yeah. I'm Karina Forrest. I live at 212 Old Sag Harbor Road in Southampton. But I'm the manager at Loaves and Fishes, and I'm here again. I guess I have 2 minutes, so I'll try to be succinct. I'd like to start at least with one of the residents very close to here. They live at 3105 Montauk Highway, within 750 feet of this proposed cell tower. Dorothy Lowenthal. I believe they submitted an email that you should have had copies of, whether it was this meeting or the last meeting, I'm not sure. But she asked me to read it because today she's going through a procedure and she's not well enough to come. So I'd like to just read this. Hello, Rhodey and Bill Tillotson. My name is Dorothy Lowenthal and I live with my husband, Michael Lowenthal, at 3105 Montauk Highway within the 750-foot range of the proposed 5G cell tower. I cannot explain why we didn't know about this cell tower issue until very recently, but one thing I do know is that this monumental issue should have been blasted from the rooftops until every single resident of Sagaponack knew about it before someone else decided what is best to do for us. I don't like the prospect of living within the range under an ominous umbrella of radiation spewing over our little house while we live here 24/7. We are aware of the ticks, the dusting of farm fields, and the constant exhaust from the busy highway that we live next to, but this never occurred to us that we might live under a not so sure what could happen scary cell tower. When I read about cell towers, nothing sounds good about them except you get good cell phone service, good cell service for good health. Let me think. This past year, I've been dealing with cancer and it's no fun at all. I won't bore you with the details, but I've been trying to glue myself back together, eating healthy, unplugging electrical devices, no smoking, drinking, etc. After going totally bald and losing all body hair, I'm now just trying to resume life, and then this comes along. How does a body compete with this looming overhead? We finally have some new grandchildren and we're looking forward to have them come to our home for extended visits and experience the wonders of our village. But now I really don't think that will happen. I would be too afraid of the unknown on their vulnerable little bodies. Everyone, including us, are talking about the health aspects of the situation, but one thing I don't hear about is the devaluation of property near this tower. One thing I do know is if I saw this near a home that I was interested in, I would think twice about moving there. What this will do to nearby property value is unknown. Don't make us consider moving away. We like our little house in Sagaponack just the way it is now. Please try to find an alternate location for the cell tower that is acceptable to all, instead of just the people that wouldn't live near it. Thank you, Dot and Mike Lowenthal. Do I have time to read one more?
Sure.
Somebody else who couldn't be here, John French Jr., also sent a letter to Rhodey. I don't know if you guys have a copy of that. I think it was recent. So I'll read that. Dear Rhodey, good afternoon. I hope all is well. Multiple residents have asked that I write an email to your office to voice my concerns about the cell phone tower. My wife and I live at 65 Sag Road, and we are very concerned about the location of the cell tower. Unfortunately, we will be out of the country for the next 10 days. I will try to connect to Wednesday's meeting using Zoom, but I don't know what type of connection I'll have here. As I mentioned at the last meeting, there hasn't been any guarantee that this tower is going to solve our cell phone service issues. There used to be a tower at Home Sweet Home in Wainscott, and that didn't improve service at all. Mary Lee Foster had a good idea of trying the portable cell phone boosters that they use at sporting events. At least we should try it to see if that would help. Most years, it's just the summer we have difficulties with service. I personally have installed a cell phone booster that allows my cell phone to use my existing Wi-Fi. All cell phone companies have them. It only costs about $7 a month to use. Since I have it installed, I have not had any issues with cell service at the house. If it is determined that we must have this tower, my stance is that there are hundreds of acres of farmland in Sagaponic. Why don't we put it there where it would be more than 1,000 feet from any structure or home? There are multiple large plots of farmland in the village that could be used. The bottom line is the board members want improved service, but don't want the tower to be next to them and affect their property value and safety. What about the airport, Oxabog Pond, the preserve off of Old Farm Road, the old dump off Narrow Lane, or even the beach where we have the wind farm to look at? The tower doesn't have to be in Sagaponic, but the village feels that we have to have it. Cell phone service is not an essential service. People are trying to run their businesses out of their house, get a landline like most longtime residents have. I hope the board and the residents can come up with a safe, common sense solution that benefits as many people as possible. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, John M. French Jr. You know my stance.
Yep.
This has been incredibly difficult for me. And I don't doubt that it's difficult for you, because when I come up here, I look at your faces and I see that it is. And I'd like to reiterate, I don't think any of you are bad people. I think that as far as I've seen from, I don't live here in Sagaponic, although I've been at Lopes long enough to feel as though I do. And what I've seen you do in the few issues I've seen come before has seemed very transparent, has seemed open, there's been dialogue, I've seen a public hearing. I think that's wonderful. I really don't understand why this didn't have a public hearing. I've lost a lot of sleep, a lot of feelings of safety. I did provide, I don't know if everybody checked their mailboxes, but I did provide studies that scientifically prove that this is linked to cancer. So, I hear you when you say that this is a done deal, you're a cog in the wheel, there's nothing to be done, but I guess, to me, if there's anyone that can do anything, and I've been juggling so many hats trying to do anything that I can on this, it would be you guys. And no one's even reached out to me, or I've sought you out, I've had some conversations with people, but I guess if this is gonna happen, which I look outside and it seems very much like it will, I know you understand what you're placing through this decision, people act. And it's not small things. And your staff.
Please do not bring my staff into this conversation.
Okay.
Just please don't do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
My staff, residents were affected from property value standpoints and health. I just wish there was another way, and I really hope that you feel sufficiently that you've done everything that you can to try and explore that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to speak? Come on up.
Mary Lee Foster, 698 Main Street. So I had a little bit of time to review past minutes, and I just have questions too, and I hope somebody can answer them, because as I've spoken to various people about this, so many people said to me, I didn't know about this, how did I not know about this? I live here. And so I started going through the minutes as to how people could maybe have not known about it. I did know about the meeting in February because Rhodey had sent out an email that I got. And I immediately noted, because I was familiar with this Homeland Towers, because they had, of course, approached us about putting the cell phone tower on our property. And so I emailed Rhodey back and she said Homeland Security would be talking to the village about a tower, and I emailed it back and I said, I think you mean Homeland Towers. I'm pretty sure that those are the two emails that you were discussing. So those are two emails that went out to the population, and it was noted it was a public discussion. When I go back to the December minutes, which would have been December 20th, there was discussion of the tower then, because already at that point, I believe that the Old Stove Pub had begun to talk about the possibility of putting a tower there. There were discussions here about it, but in the minutes it was noted, Rhodey asked if there would be a public hearing, to which council responded, yes, there will be a public hearing when the site plan and contractor receive, then there will be a public hearing. But then I noted in the January 17th minutes that it was noted that there was no need for a public hearing. And so noting the 20th of December to the 17th of January, 2 weeks of which are pretty well steeped in holiday revelry or depression, depending on how you feel about the end of the year. Something happened here that I guess I don't understand from like, how does that happen in a municipality where there was going to be, like, what is the mechanism, I guess, which I'm asking, that we went from having a public hearing to in February, a public discussion? What is the mechanism that allowed you as the board to be advised on January 17th that there was no need for a public hearing? You had actually expressed interest in having public feed. A public hearing gets a lot more information flowing than a public discussion, right? Like, they sound even really different. A public.
Asking me to argue.
No, I know,
Yeah.
I'm asking the broad question is,
Yeah.
what is that mechanism?
I think at some point, the legal process was looked at closely, and we're not required to have one. And all the push we had was to get the thing up. I think Rhodey can tell you, we have constant phone calls about why the tower isn't up.
There was
And-
no opposition.
Yeah.
No, I understand that, but what I'm trying
Yeah.
to say is, before there was the public discussion within the village, it came already, but there had been no public, I mean, it had, obviously, Old Stove Pub had been.
I can help the answer. The way Bill said it was, the mayor said it was exactly right, from a layperson's perspective. It was unnecessary as a public hearing under state village law, lays out when you have to have a public hearing. Public hearing is when you adopt local law or code amendments to the code. In this case, there were multiple public meetings, but there was no public hearing because it was not required under state law. And we reviewed it with the cell phone company to make sure their legal analysis, again, this is not their first rodeo, and I'm sure they've been battle tested and checked multiple times, including federal lawsuits on it. And their conclusion was that a public hearing under state law was not only not required, but impermissible. So what this board did was it had multiple public meetings and notices with the 600 emails and the notices out, but a public hearing, a legal public hearing, as we would have had for compost, was not required. So whereas the public meetings we had, I forget how many I recited at the last, how many minutes you just went through? 6, 5? 5?
Yeah,
We discussed it.
no, I was talking about the December meeting.
December,
Which there
January.
was, so again, in December, anybody who'd been present would have been led to believe there will be a public hearing on this. And I think that, again, I'm not sure, what I learned this new term, contract of adhesion, which sounds like, that's kind of what Homeland Towers does supply. The most of their I don't, clients, would we be, or clients or what, landlord, you'd be a landlord, but it's kind of a contract of adhesion, no?
No, we could have said.
But the idea that you would
Yeah.
strike the need for a public hearing
You know, it's
in
not.
a small municipality that was built by many people in this room, that's kind of an
Okay,
outrage.
we're not gonna argue, if you have
Okay.
something to say,
But I
tell us.
did, no, I said, well, then I
Yeah.
had one more, can I have one more question?
Sure, yeah, well,
S-
questions may not get an answer.
Okay, let's try, because I think the answer is known. In maybe it was the November minutes, there was asked if there was anything new on the cell phone tower, to which council responded that you and council were sort of reviewing their documents, maybe this was December actually, reviewing the documents, and that council had said, listen, I'm gonna, because of where we are and the property values here, we're going to ask for better terms for the village. And so what I was just curious to know is what is the better terms that you achieved, I'm assuming? And then because I began to understand this term contract of adhesion, so I wanted to know, like, what's the monthly revenue stream? And then what happens, I know you're not gonna do this, but when you do say, if say, for some reason, everybody's like, oh my God, don't want this tower, what would the cost to the village be?
Nothing. There's a bond posted for removal. And I think you must have the income stream. Didn't you forward the Fosters all kinds of tons of documents, everything?
Contracts.
You got it.
No, the contracts, but no, because what I'm,
Yeah.
so like the
And
month, like.
we can get, Brody can get it to you, okay?
But so what you're saying is if you guys decided here today, which I'm not, no indication that you do so, say, oh, wait, we actually don't want this tower here, there'd be no financial consequence to the village?
Oh, no. You mean on, I think the mayor meant on removal. If on removal.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about like, what would be, Homeland Tower's recourse, financial,
Well, they would sue the village for breach of contract.
and so there's not like there's no dollar amount placed on that.
No, there would be.
So unlike most contracts where it just says like amount, like.
Yeah, like liquidated damages, no.
Yeah.
In this case, it would be a breach of contract for the income stream. 55 years of income.
$6 million.
So they're what they intend to make in their entire 55 year. Okay,
correct.
one last question. When we discussed this back in March, it was said, no, we're not talking about a 5G tower, we're talking about a 3G tower. And Rhodey said with an option to upgrade.
I think it's 4G.
Okay, 4G tower with an option to upgrade to 5. What does the option to upgrade look like?
I don't think that's, I don't know.
I mean, is it just as simple as them saying, actually,
You're
we're going
getting into the
5G?
weeds. You're getting into the weeds. We're not
I
a bunch
don't know
of
if it's
technicians
an
here.
option, I just think that they can do it, that the tower has the
There's no
ability to
option
do
on
it.
It's not
up to
a
them
different
whether they
monetary
want
amount.
5G.
They can meet whatever, they can provide whatever service FCC, the Federal Communications Commission says is allowable.
So they're installing a 4G tower with the likelihood that it
They're
will
installing a
be-
tower which will meet FCC requirements for whatever is used at that time.
But in all likelihood, so there's no sort of discussion if it goes to 5G,
No,
just
no,
because there's a difference between the
It's
two.
because a different level of government controls it.
No, I
We're
understand
not-
that.
Yeah, we're not allowed to control that. That's not in our little
So
circle.
then the
what we
term
can-
is not option to upgrade, really. I heard that, so option to upgrade came from a previous meeting, but what I'm saying is it's actually not an option to
The
upgrade,
option
they
has
can
nothing
upgrade
to
it.
do with us. It has to do with the
Right,
feds.
so it's not like you enter some new round.
Right.
Like
no.
sometimes when contracts are changed, both parties come to the table,
No.
but not in this
The,
case.
the carrier has the option. There's
55.
actually a very
I'm
specific,
done, thank you.
very specific federal law that states what their option is.
Yeah. And we have none, thank
For people
you.
who haven't been to these meetings before, there was a statement about 1,000 feet from any structure. I don't know where that comes from. There's a lot of Google science out there. One of my sons sent me all kinds of negative things, research about cell towers. But there is such a thing as called peer-reviewed science. And really, if you go to American Cancer Society site, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that they look at. Just because somebody says a researcher and they've looked at something doesn't mean that it's actually, the statistics they use are valid. And this 1,000 feet from a structure, there would be no place in Sagaponack that you could put a tower. And there was a statement about it not being an essential service. Well, the federal government says it is an essential service. And if you don't read newspapers, you won't have followed that the closest one where St. Peter's Chapel in Springs, there was a proposal to put a tower there probably 10 years ago. The town opposed it, and they spent lawyer fees for at least 8 years trying to get it, preclude the construction of it. It is now constructed. The federal government stepped in and said that it is an essential service, and the town could not deny the construction of it, even though the neighbors sued it. I don't see where this village is going to enter into a fruitless lawsuit trying to remove a tower, which will be built here somewhere in Sagaponack because we don't have adequate service. That's the end of it for me. Anybody else have a comment? Well, thank you all for coming. The next meeting will be November. Did anybody else want to speak? Come on up.
Hi guys. Hi. Laura Hayward, 172 Narrow Lane East. I represent several of our neighbours on Narrow Lane East about the cell tower issue. I can't question the legality, I can't question the relative merits of having one versus not having one. My feeling is that there are many friends, neighbours and village residents that do not feel like this is the right site. And several other proposed sites have been reviewed or potentially been lightly looked at. We live closer to those sites than we do to this site, but would like the opportunity to see the costs and benefits of shifting this position-wise. I feel like that would at least give people in this room a view that due process has been followed and that that all of the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed before this proceeds.
Okay, thank you. I mean, if you want to come up with that number, that's great. We're all volunteers. And I don't see where I'm going to spend my time trying to figure out a number on something just because somebody asked for it. But if you want to do it, go ahead. Or you know somebody who wants to volunteer to do it. It's unsettling. I wish everybody was happy, but there is going to be a tower here. Whether we allow it or not, at some point, it'll be delayed if you want to fight it. It'll be expensive to fight it. But the companies can show that there's an unmet need here, that there's danger. I have people who have complained that they've had medical emergencies and their phone doesn't work. It's going to happen, and it's nowhere in Sagaponack can you get 1,000 feet from a house. I mean, I guess you could float it out in the ocean, but I don't think that's cost effective. Thank you all. I appreciate your comment and I appreciate the comments. Next meeting, November 20th, 3 p.m. I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Thank you.